يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان إنه كان ظلوما جهولا. ليعذب الله المنافقين والمنافقات والمشركين والمشركات ويتوب الله على المؤمنين والمؤمنات وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We thank Allah for sparing our lives and giving us another opportunity to witness another episode of OU Ubu. My name is Falila Telubumi Alabi, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's episode, which is going to be a continuation of what we did last week concerning sickle cell. And we hope to have one of our mothers here that will be discussing with us today. And please, before we go on with the program, may I remind you to please invite family and friends, invite people that will benefit from this program. And we want to thank you for all your donations, all your support so far towards the rebuild of Old Kent Road Mosque. Last week Sunday, we went to visit the site, and we were all impressed. We really appreciate what they are doing so far. We pray that Allah make it easy for us to complete this program. We just wanted to see what we are spending your money on. If you visit the site, and I'm very sure you will really be impressed with the work going on so far. Pray Allah make it easy for all of us to be able to redeem our pledges. So please join us online, check all our social media platforms, and please share with loved ones so that they can benefit from this program. Now, I'd like to call on one of our Madcast pupils, so please read the Quran recitation for us. Ismail Akiyemi, Bismillah, please.
السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عبس وتولى أن جاءه الأعمى وما يدريك لعله يزكى أو يذكر فتنفعه الذكرى أما من استغنى فأنت له تصدى وما عليك ألا يزكى وأما من جاءك يسعى وهو يخشى فأنت عنه تلهى كلا إنها تذكرة فمن شاء ذكر في صحف مكرمة مرفوعة مطهرة بأيدي سفرة كرام بررة قتل الإنسان ما أكفره من أي شيء خلقه من نطفة خلقه فقدره ثم السبيل يسره ثم أماته فأقبره ثم إذا شاء أنشره كلا لما يقض ما أمره فلينظر الإنسان إلى طعامه أنا سببنا الماء صبا ثم شققنا الأرض شقا فأنبتنا فيها حبا وعنبا وقضبا وزيتونا ونخلا وحدائق غلبا وفاكهة وأبا متاعا لكم ولأنعامكم فإذا جاءت الصاخة يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمي وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه لكل امرئ منهم يومئذ شأن يغنيه ووجوه يومئذ مسفرة ضاحكة مستبشرة ووجوه يومئذ عليها غبرة ترهقها قترة أولئك هم الكفرة الفجرة صدق الله العظيم.
Allahu Akbar. Jazakumullah khairan for that beautiful recitation, Ismail. May Allah accept it as act of ibadah. May He bless you, your parents, and your tutor. So, moving on. Please, I'd like to remind us that it is that time when our youths go on the camp. They always go on summer camp every year. And every year they have different teams. This team this year is reviving the Sunnah. Alhamdulillah. So the date is from Saturday, 26 August to Tuesday, 29 August. So we are taking bookings now and the closing is fast approaching. So please register your words, sign up your children to please enjoy this summer camp. It's really a good way for the kids to connect in halal way. May Allah make it easy for us. So now I'd like to hand over to our father, our moderator, Professor Moshood Adebayo Badering. Bismillah, sir.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Jazakumullah khaira jaza. Thank you so much, Laja Fadila, for starting us off. And I also want to welcome all our audience to today's session of O Ye Who Believe. Alhamdulillah, we will be continuing from the issue we're tackling in the last two sessions. You know, sickle cell is a very visible and also very troubling condition amongst our community. Therefore, you will remember that we had Dr. Sharifa Mamma Ojewi, who is a pediatrician, an expert in this, who is, in practice now, actually. And she gave us a lot of insight, beneficial insight into the condition. And last week, we had the sickle cell warriors, 4 of them from our community who spoke from personal experience, which also was really very, very eye-opening for us. Today, we are really, really honored to have one of the pioneers, or let me say the real pioneer of, sickle cell management in the UK. This is in person of Professor Dame Elizabeth Nneka Anyong. She has a Nigerian linkage and also an Irish linkage here in the UK. We are really, really, really honored to have Prof. Prof, you are most welcome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate you for coming to share your knowledge with us and our audience. Professor Anyong, is a multiple award winner in her field, and she's acknowledged, by the kingdom. She became the United Kingdom's first sickle cell and thalassemia nurse specialist, quite a while ago. And she helped to establish the Brent Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Counseling Center a while ago. She created the Mary Sickle Center for Nursing Practice at the University of West London. And she also, lectured in nursing at UCL. And she's a professor emeritus at the University of West London. She holds the Order of the Merit and was appointed the Dame Commander of the Order of the British Empire and is also a fellow of the Royal College of Nursing, RCN. In 2019, I think, in recognition of her passion for nursing and dedication to reducing health inequalities, she received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Pride of Britain Awards in October 2009. And the award was presented by, Janet Jackson. You can go on and on and on. I'm really, really excited and honored to have, Prof with us today. And we will be talking, looking at sickle cell, dealing with sickle cell, the past, the present, and the future. Dr. Sharifat Momo is also here with us online. And I believe, she will also want to make a contribution. The way we will approach it tonight, because we want our audience and ourselves to benefit from it. Normally, we give our, guest speakers about 20 minutes to just give a lecture and then questions follow. But today, we will do it like a question and answer series. Now, I will ask a few questions. And after Prof has answered that, we will quickly open the floor so that we get questions from the audience. We know that our sickle cell warriors are also online. I believe that many or some of the issues that we raised in the last 2 weeks will also perhaps maybe reoccur. Because we were having Prof on the program today, I had to search. She has a book, Dreams from My Mother. I had to buy it, and believe you me, it's a page turner about, Prof's life. How from her birth up to, it is really, I encourage anyone really who needs motivation to do your starting, your background should not really hold you down at all in whatever you do. It's really, it has inspired me. I'm continuing to read it, and it has really given me an opener, an eye-opener about Prof. Thank you so much, for coming, Dame. And we hope we'll be able to benefit a lot from you today. Now, to start us off, as I did mention, you are the pioneer of how sickle cell is managed in the UK today. It has been a long journey. So perhaps maybe we should start from the past. If you could just tell us a little bit, maybe about yourself and how you were able to identify the need to have a better sickle cell management within the health system in the UK, and how your trajectory then moved it on until you established the sickle center in London. So the floor is yours now. If you could just give us a brief background. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Badrin. It's a huge honor, first of all, to be invited to have this discussion with your organization. And once again, thank you very much for the invitation. So my background, to put it in context, because I'm retired, and I want to stress that, because I'm not in practice. And Prof, as you know, we have to be very careful when we're not in practice. We're not totally up to date. So I will be reflecting on the past, and obviously I'm very happy to answer questions. I love this format, that the majority is question and answer format. So my background was nursing, and I became the first sickle cell nurse specialist in this country in 1979. And I was working with the now deceased, Dr. Misha Brozovic. And I want to mention her very much at the beginning, because she was a consultant hematologist, and she was my mentor. She was the one that really opened so many doors for me. And that's because I just like to get the historical context correct. I'm a bit of a nerd, as you know, Prof. I want to know the exact facts. And I really want to honor the late Dr. Misha Brozovic, because as a medical doctor, as a hematologist, she was the one that saw that I was also very interested in this illness, but obviously from a different perspective from her. There was overlap. My interest was from a community nursing point of view, but also as a Black nurse, or, as you've said, of Nigerian and Irish heritage. So it was very close to me, particularly when I found out that I had a cousin with the illness. So I talk about the 3 Ps that got me involved with sickle cell. And the first P is personal. It impacted on my own family. And I think this will have huge relevance for those listening in, yourself and all the people listening in. It touches us, it touches our community very closely. The second P is professional. I was a health visitor in the late 1970s, early 1980s in Brent. And my patch, as we called it, or my catchment area, was part of Wembley. And it became clear fairly quickly that there were families that I was visiting who were affected by sickle cell disease. Either their children had the condition or they themselves as adults had the condition. Significantly larger number, of course, didn't have the illness, but were at risk of having children with the condition because they were carriers. They had sickle cell trait, perfectly healthy, but as you will all know in the audience, if both the parents are carriers, every time they have a child, there's a risk that their child will inherit the illness. So this got me very interested, but from another reason, because I've talked about the personal, I've talked about the professional. The third P is political, and I am a political animal with a small p.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by political? What I mean by that is that as somebody who, I was born in this country, I did all my nursing and health visiting training in this country, and yet I never had a lecture on sickle cell anemia in my nursing training at the end of the 60s in London, or in my health visiting training in the early 70s, also in London. And yet when I go out and practice, I come across families with this illness. Why was I not taught about this illness? And to me, that's a political dimension, because the reason is that this was not, I don't think the tutors even knew about the illness. It was only specialists, it was only certain hematologists, certain pediatricians who were knowledgeable about this illness. But it impacted on so many people. So that made me quite angry. I'm political, and I'm an angry person sometimes. Angry because the suffering that families affected by this condition was made worse by the ignorance of the professionals, the health professionals that they were coming in contact with, apart from this small number of, as I've said, specialists. So general practitioners, health visitors, nurses on the wards, so many people. And we can't blame them, because like me, many of them had not had any information in their training. So putting these 3 Ps together was what ultimately led me to find out as much as I could about the illness. As I've said, Dr. Misha Brozovic was my main teacher as well as my mentor. But I also went to the United States on holiday. I had family in the United States, and I actually used it as an excuse to have a base to go and learn more about the illness, because the civil rights campaign in the United States had really raised the level of awareness about sickle cell anemia. And there were these centers called sickle cell comprehensive centers. And when I went to them, that's when I discovered not only were the doctors obviously involved, but nurses were involved. And I thought, hold on, I didn't know that nurses could specialize in this. And so when I went back to London, so the first thing I told Dr. Brozovic, who I'd known because she had given lectures about sickle cell, I'd asked lots of questions. So informally, we were working together. She saw that as I was a health educator, I could have a big role in helping her to raise the awareness of this condition amongst the nurses and also within our communities. So I came back and I said, you know, Dr. Brozovic, I could become a specialist in this. I've already been on a short course in America. They put me on free of charge because they couldn't get over the fact that, first of all, I had a British accent when they thought I was an African American looking at me. So they, who is this woman? And then when I said, look, we have problems with sickle cell in Britain, they were very honest with me. They said, we didn't realize it was an issue in Britain as well. What can we do to help you? So to cut a long story short, they provided lots of resources that helped us establish the Brent Sickle Cell Centre. And we did call it the Brent Sickle Cell and Thalassemia Centre, but actually for our area in Northwest London, sickle cell was the key condition that we were facing. And so that's really the background. I hope that will give you some
Yes, it did. I mean, give us a context to how you came into this. Now, you mentioned a point there, which perhaps I want you to address briefly, because I mean, we have to really understand this in context. You said, I mean, in London, in the United Kingdom, I mean, in the 60s, in nursing, nothing was mentioned about sickle cell. Was it because, I mean, it was essentially only within the Black community, and therefore the establishment didn't know about it? Or so perhaps, I mean, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, sorry.
Yeah.
So my experience is late 60s and early 70s in terms of my own education. And what I later discovered, Prof, was there were the odd tutors in other teaching hospitals and schools of nursing that did give a little bit of information, but it was very ad hoc and not very common. So the vast majority of nurses like myself would go through their 3-year nurse training program and not receive any lectures on sickle cell. And we're talking about schools of nursing in urban areas where we obviously found out later when we learned about this condition. Of course, there were patients in the hospital with this condition, in the community with this condition, but we were never taught about the illness. So that was very alarming. And you wondered whether it was to do with the fact that it primarily affects the non-white community. And I would say, yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's really good to know. I mean, we have so many professionals on this program. And one thing that has come out clearly here is whatever our discipline, we should keep our eyes open to be able to see where we can have. Thank you so much really for, pioneering, bringing this into light. It might have come if you didn't address it later in time, but I mean, you nipped it in the bud, and for example, I mean, even at SOAS, as you know, I teach at SOAS. We started the concept of, because we were looking and we saw that, I mean, many of the things, even SOAS being School of Oriental and African Studies, we saw many of the materials we use on the curriculum was really based on, it was very colonial in the context. So we started the, campaign of decolonizing, education, decolonizing the curriculum. Now it has spread over all universities in the UK. So, I mean, everywhere we are, as you did, we should be able to open our eyes and see where there is a gap and which we can fill. Thank you so much. We are where we are now. Sickle cell, I mean, is known and is being, treated now. Now, I mean, part of what you were doing was also advocacy. I mean, bringing it to light, letting people know and things like that. But still, within the local communities, especially the local Black communities, it is people still, I mean, there's this stigma attached to it. People don't want to talk about it. Now, what do you see? How's the advocacy, on sickle cell management currently? I mean, how do you see it? Even though you are retired, I can see in the introduction in your book that, I mean, that you are still engaged with the Sickle Cell Society, the Nigerian Nurses Charitable Association, and so on. So how do you see? Is the advocacy good enough, or is there another way by which you can really continue to make this, I mean, really in the open space?
So if I compare today with what I was experiencing, what I was observing in the late 1970s, we have actually come a long way. So I think we do have to acknowledge where progress has been made. The best example of progress is that every newborn baby in this country, regardless of ethnic origin, is screened for sickle cell disease alongside, phenylketonuria so I mean that is a major revolutionary step, because I stress that every baby, regardless of ethnic origin, and to demonstrate that at long last the message has come home to, for example, the Department of Health, the National Health Service that funds this program, that sickle cell can affect anybody regardless of their skin color. That is, skin color does not determine whether you get sickle cell or not. Yes, the majority of patients in this country with sickle cell disease are non-white. So we know that the majority of people who are at risk of this condition are non-white, but we know that there are white people who have this condition. So that was a big step to convince the authorities that you don't do what we call selective screening, looking at somebody to see if they're black enough to warrant being tested for sickle cell. No, you do it different ways. So as I said, I'd like to acknowledge that sort of major progress. However, and there's progress in awareness, etc. However, it still hasn't got the resources attached to it in terms of research, in terms of education for all the health professionals that need this information. Things have got better, but a lot of the times it's because, sadly, a case where neglect has been identified. Sadly, the odd death of an individual which should not have happened, and happened through ignorance and neglect of awareness amongst health professionals, mainly because they have not been taught about it properly. So there's still work to be done, but there has been progress.
Thank you so much. I know Dr. Sharifa is online with us as well. If you really want to intervene, please do. I mean, one thing I wanted to mention is, I mean, I'm not a medical, a person, but we know from what we read that preventive medicine is usually, much more beneficial than when you talked about resources. Now, in what ways, it might be a dumb question. In what ways can this be, among the Black community, can this disease be really prevented rather than, the curative aspect of putting, what is the preventive steps? From point of the Black community themselves, and from point of the state, and also from point of the professionals. I know it's a tricky and sensitive question, but
it's a question I'm very familiar with. The preventive aspect is more complex than you would find for example, if you talk about vaccinations, to prevent certain illnesses, that tends to be more straightforward. Prevention of sickle cell disease is much more complicated from an ethical point of view.
That's right.
Because at the moment, really, the only way that this illness could be prevented is by people at risk of having children with the condition, either not having children with somebody with sickle. Let's make it straightforward. The vast majority of children with sickle cell anemia, the commonest condition, are born to parents where both of them have what's called sickle cell trait. So that is, and I'm sure the audience know this, but just to make sure. So both parents would be, for example, healthy carriers of sickle cell trait. But every time they have a child, there's a risk that each child they have could be born with the illness. There's a chance that the child couldn't be born with the illness. There's a chance the child could be born with sickle cell trait like the parents. But That's where the risk is. So how would you avoid those parents having children with sickle cell anemia? We can go through all sorts of options. And these options, I know, will make people shudder at times, but let's go through the options. Firstly, is that those parents do not have any children together. Secondly, that they do conceive children together and take the opportunity of seeing whether their unborn baby has the illness or not, because science enables that now. Again, I told you these are ethical issues, so I don't want people jumping down my neck on what are the options available. So let's take the parents where they decide they want to go down this road of having a pregnancy, but wanting to know, would their unborn baby have this illness or not? So you can actually find this out in pregnancy, but you can't as yet. I think possibly, I know there's developments, but at the moment, to tell a couple that their unborn baby has the illness, what can they do about this? Well, the choices are again very difficult. There's nothing at the moment where they can stop the illness in the unborn baby. There's nothing that they can do to cure the illness in the unborn baby. There are actually advances in terms of bone marrow transplantation in utero, etc. But this is still cutting edge science, and it's not something you can go into the maternity clinic and ask for. So at the moment, it's not practical, even though scientifically it's feasible. So what option is there if they do find out that the baby, the unborn baby has the illness? Is to continue with the pregnancy in full knowledge that this is the situation, to prepare themselves to make sure that their baby gets the full specialized services from birth. So it's preparation. The second option, which is really a difficult option and would be against significant number of people's faith beliefs, so I put that first of all out there, and that is to terminate the pregnancy. So straight away you can see, hold on, not sure that this is something that everybody would be even willing to go down that pathway, but as I'm putting out what the current options are. So really, I mean, there might be some, there may be some other more technical ones, but those are the common options. Some people do take those options, but it's not preventing babies being born with sickle cell disease in this country. That's really what I will lay that out.
Thank you. I mean, thank you so much for really. I know it's a very sensitive and sort of a very delicate question, but we need to be factual and address it. Now,
I'm sorry.
Before I open,
sorry, you see, I'm talking about sort of prevention from the classic public health aspect, where like you're preventing measles or you're preventing. So for the total population, you can, of course, there have been advances in science that there are children and odd adult that have actually been cured of sickle cell anemia through, for example, bone marrow transplant, through gene therapy. But they're risky, they're expensive. There has to be matches between donor and recipient. So the numbers that have, where these successes, if you like, have been achieved are very, very small in number. So we wouldn't put them in the preventive category, if you sort of mean. We put them in this, if you like, the curative section.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether Dr. Sharifa, I mean, want to say something on that as well?
Oh, yes,
from
please.
From a practice point of view. Before,
Yes.
I mean, we open the door for, general questions. I will put the issue of the future down the line to see how things can be bettered into the future down the line. So, Dr. Sharifa, please.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So sorry, I just realized I'm unable to share my video. So, but yeah, because I'm actually joining from my phone today, and I've not done that for a long time. So thank you so much for inviting me again, and thank you very much, Professor Anyanwu. Thank you, Professor Badering. Thank you so much. And this is very important topic we are discussing about. And I'm so sorry I missed the last weeks. I was disappointed I didn't see the topic on time. I should have joined. So yes, in addition to what Prof has mentioned about the preventive measures, yeah, I think she's correct. She's absolutely right. I think I must have mentioned some of this on my talk as well. That
That's
preventive,
right, yes,
the preventive aspects are not so, if we think about what preventive medicine is supposed to be doing, we cannot say it is actually happening currently in sickle cell disease. Because as Prof has mentioned, the ethics behind what happens after we now know that the pregnancy, because the mother is already pregnant, so that is too late. The pregnancy has taken place. And most of the time, people that have sickle cell disease are mostly very religious people. People from Africa, we are one of the most religious people in the world. If they are not Christians, they are Muslims or other religions. And most of these religions don't accept what comes after the test, which is at time they offer termination of the pregnancy. So I think the best preventive measure, which I also mentioned briefly, was the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. As Prof said, all these measures are not widely available. As I mentioned as well in my last talk, we call PGD, the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. This is done before pregnancy. The egg, everything is chosen before implanting. So at that point, you're sure, okay, what we are implanting doesn't carry the sickle cell gene, or maybe just a carrier. But this is not widely available because it is very expensive. And some of the criteria is that the parent must actually already have one child that is affected with sickle cell disease. And people may say this is unfair. Why? Is it because it's sickle cell? Is it because it's not affecting everyone and it's not affecting other people? It's commonly affecting people from African or Afro-Caribbean origin. But I don't think that is the case, because that pre-implantation genetic diagnosis is not only for sickle cell disease, it's for other conditions as well. So I won't say it's just attacking sickle cell disease, because other conditions are there and there are very strict criteria before one can be eligible. I think there's an age criteria. You must be less than 40. You will have evidence that you have one child that is affected, and there are some, and the couple, they must be living together. They will have the same address. So there are quite a few things that are attached to this. So yes,
thank you so much.
Still a long way. There is still a long way to go, but we have come a long way as well. And thank you, Prof, as well. Just quickly, I'll mention, I heard the story about this Brent, how sickle cell, how we started sickle cell services in London. I think I was at one of the inauguration lecture of Professor Paul Telfar, and I think he also mentioned the story. So thank you so much for enlightening us more about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's open the floor now. I know, sickle cell warriors are here. People will want, last week we couldn't answer all the questions. So control room, I hope, the floor is open now. Any questions, please?
Yes, we've got, somebody is asking if someone with SC, how easy is it for them to conceive?
Somebody with sickle cell.
Does
it affect fertility? How easy is it for them to conceive?
Is it specifically hemoglobin SC disease? because there are different, obviously everybody knows there are different types of sickle cell disease. So there is hemoglobin S and hemoglobin C, so hemoglobin SC disease. But sometimes sickle cell disease is shortened to SC. So I was just wondering for the person
I think it meant sickle cell.
Oh, it meant sickle cell. So how easy my experience now, again, don't forget I'm retired, so the vast majority of the individuals with sickle cell disease in our area were conceiving without difficulties. There were some that were having fertility issues. I would be interested to ask the other the clinician, what's the up-to-date view on fertility and sickle cell disease? Has there been any research findings that you're aware of, please?
Dr. Sharifa.
Sorry, I got disconnected. I have a very unstable Wi-Fi. So the question I heard before I got disconnected was about SC having. Can you repeat the question, please?
Difficulty in conceiving.
When one is SC?
Yeah, when one has sickle cell, that's right, yes.
Yeah, well, so that's a very interesting question. So just like anybody in the population can have infertility. Yeah, anyone with sickle cell disease can have infertility. So, but generally, sickle cell disease, people that have sickle cell disease in pregnancy is a bit of a stressful period for them, and they can tend to have more crisis. So even generally, it's not really advisable for them to keep carrying on having so many children. So, but having that first child, I don't really see the link immediately of how sickle cell disease is preventing conception. But generally, from my experience, in my pediatric experience, at times people with sickle cell disease tend to attain, some of them, not all the time, they do attain their menarche later. They attain puberty, always the case. Yeah. So, but we have many people with sickle cell disease that have children, but at the same time, we do have some with sickle cell disease that don't. Maybe it's their sickle cell disease that has affected them. I'm not able to say. I think I'll be able to confirm from a gynecology colleague or obstetric colleague in this aspect.
Thank you very much. I mean, so it doesn't, I mean, generally it's not known, but all the warriors we had last week, I mean, all of them, especially, I mean, they all have children. So really, they've married, they have children. So perhaps, I mean, that answers the question. Any further question, please?
Yes. Somebody is asking, what is the relationship between sickle cell and thalassemia?
Do you want me to answer that?
Yes, please, Prof. Then doctor will come in.
Yeah. So they're both unusual hemoglobin types. So the usual, some people call it the normal hemoglobin type or the usual hemoglobin type in the general population is what's called AA. Hemoglobin, and A actually stands for adult hemoglobin. So A from one parent and A from the other, and we end up, my hemoglobin type, for example, is AA. But there are many, many different types of hemoglobins that we call hemoglobin variants. Sickle is the one that we will all be aware of in this audience. Hemoglobin C is another one. So that's why it can get a bit confusing when we're talking about SC disease. The specialists will teach us, you say sickle cell disease or sickle cell disorder when you're talking about the group of different types of sickle cell conditions. But when you want to specify what type of hemoglobin variant has combined with sickle to form a type of sickle cell disease, you would say, for example, sickle cell anemia is hemoglobin SS, the classic condition. But there is a hemoglobin C, which can combine with S, So we call that hemoglobin SC disease, not to be confused with sickle cell disease, of which it is a type of sickle. It can get a bit confusing. So that's why when people are asking, I'm wondering, are they talking about sickle cell disease in general or specifically hemoglobin SC disease? Because whilst there are similar symptoms with all types of sickle cell disease, some are more common in certain types of sickle cell disease. But you can have one parent passing on the sickle gene and the other parent passing on thalassemia trait, and the child can inherit sickle thalassemia. And there's a more severe type of sickle thalassemia, and there's a milder type of sickle thalassemia. I won't go into the details of that, but just it's a hemoglobin variant, if you like. But the interesting thing about sickle, the difference between sickle and thalassemia, is the sickle hemoglobin, you're producing enough hemoglobin, but it's not the right type. It's not the normal hemoglobin. With thalassemia, you're not producing enough hemoglobin. So I just thought I'd just share that.
Thank you so much. I mean, really, really interesting and eye-opening. Doctor, do you want to add anything on that, or it's covered? Okay, I think maybe she's disconnected now.
Yes,
okay,
I'll just add
question?
one or two things.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Prof.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm not.
Okay, go on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah. So, just quickly, just to mention that thalassemias are not as common in our population like sickle cell. So we have just a handful. Like I said in my service, we have like close to 400 children, and maybe just about 10 with significant thalassemia compared to sickle cell disease. So thalassemia means means absent. So absent, like Prof said, is not present. The globin, there was deficiency in the globin. So if it's beta thalassemia, no beta globins. Alpha thalassemia, no alpha. So and these can be very severe as well, but we don't have a carrier of thalassemia. Be very careful. It can combine with sickle to call sickle beta thalassemia, which can also be very severe, like sickle cell disease. So if you are told you're a carrier of a thalassemia gene, be very careful with sickle gene. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, really, 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 I mean, we've been educated. Thank you so much. We'll continue with the questions, but as we normally do, please let's have a brief interlude, I mean, to have a projection of the old Kent Road Mosque Islamic Law, Islamic Cultural Center, project. The control room.
Choose which space your bricks of barakah will build. Old Kent Road Mosque in the heart of London needs your urgent support. Donate your share now to invest in your akhirah. Rebuild the house of Allah and support our growing community. Phase 1 has been completed and £3 million is needed to complete the next phase. Stack your sadaqah with bricks of barakah. Donate today by visiting launchgood.com/bricks of barakah.
Just under 60 seconds, I'm going to tell you why investing in this opportunity will change your life. Are you ready? Start the clock. Over 20 years ago, a group of believers acquired a derelict pub slap bang in the centre of the old Kent Road. As we've grown, so has our need for space. And we are embarking upon the journey of a lifetime to extend the good work of this masjid. And we need you to join us on this journey. Let me remind you of Allah's promise. Whoever builds a mosque for the sake of Allah, Allah will build for him a house in paradise. And it doesn't stop there. The masjid that we build will continue to give you rewards for as long as it remains standing, perhaps decades after you pass away. Think about all the people who attend the mosque to pray 5 times a day, every single day of the year. The Jummah service that is attended by hundreds of people, the hundreds of youngsters learning how to recite the Quran, and your fellow brothers and sisters breaking their fast in the month of Ramadan, right here in this masjid. Inshallah, you'll get a slice of the reward. All of these and more coming straight to your scale of good deeds. So what are you waiting for? Help us build this masjid. Sponsor a prayer space and get your friends, neighbours and loved ones to sponsor one too. Or even better, get together and sponsor a whole saf. And inshallah, watch how Allah elevates you in this life and the next.
Jazakumullah khairan for reminding us about the Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Center, they rebuild. We have finished phase 1, the phase 2 plus is in place. I want to thank you, as Alaja did mention when we started, for all your donations. The donations have been spent in the right way, but we have still a long way to go. So continue donating towards the rebuild, and we hope, inshallah ta'ala, that we'll be able to complete the second phase 2 plus very, very soon. You can do this in various ways. We have the brick of barakah. If you want to sponsor one brick, it's £100. You can sponsor multiple bricks. If you want to pay for a surf, a row, complete row, £1,000, and if you do this, it's, based on faith. Allah will reward you both in this world and in hereafter. You heard that hadith. The Islamic belief is that if you contribute in building a place of worship for Allah on earth, Allah will build a mansion for you in paradise. So we should try and continue to contribute to this. May Allah continue to assist us. So use the bank details that are displayed there. And when you donate, either SAF or BOB, Bricks of Barakah, for reference, so that you'll be able to take account. Now we'll be coming back to that, inshallah, to see how people are doing with the donation. We have a few minutes to go. So I think there are still some few questions. I can see that. Control room, can we have
a lot
more
of
questions, please?
So,
Okay, please, yeah, go on.
Coming in anonymously. I don't know if this has been addressed, but the person is wanting to know the implication for a person with alpha plus thalassemia trait married to another with sickle cell traits.
There's no problem. Do you want me to answer? I'm happy to answer that.
Yes, please. Yeah.
Sorry, Dr. Moore, do you want to answer that? There's no problem as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know whether.
Yeah, Sharifa, process. Do you want to answer that? Do you want to take that?
No,
Did you get a question?
So, alpha carrier with sickle.
An alpha carrier that is married to another with sickle cell traits.
Yeah. So the currently alpha thal most of the time is not as severe. Those that have absent alpha. So thalassemia means alpha thalassemia is absent alpha. Beta thalassemia, absent beta. So we do have severe symptoms when it's beta carrier combining with sickle. Then they have what we call sickle beta thalassemia, and they behave like SS at times. So, but with alpha and sickle, I've not seen any significant, I don't have any patient that has that combination, or maybe because they went well, so I have not seen them present. But to be honest, if there is known to have, if there's a problem with any gene, anyone that's already a carrier of a sickle cell gene should be very careful with having combination with another abnormal gene. So alpha gene carrier is abnormal, but they are well. They don't become unwell. Beta carrier, also they are well because they are only carriers. But when they combine, when the carrier plus the carrier combine, they can have significant symptoms. I have not seen it with alpha and sickle, but I don't know if Prof has seen any.
No,
I've not seen abnormality or significant symptoms. So, but I cannot reassure you that it's okay to go ahead. If one can avoid abnormal genes coming together, I think it's the best.
Sickle and alpha is not a problem. I wouldn't.
Yeah, it's not
I wouldn't
a problem.
be worried about.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be worried about that. But as you've stressed already, sickle and beta is quite a different matter, because that will be a type of sickle cell disease, as you've said. Where the alpha is concerned, and it's more an issue with people from the Far East and other countries is there's something called alpha zero thalassemia trait. That in itself is not a problem, but if your partner has alpha zero thalassemia trait as well, you can have a baby, an unborn baby with such severe anemia, it will not survive the pregnancy. That it isn't an issue for our communities really, but it does get a bit confusing with alpha and beta and all the different, yeah.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
Okay, sorry.
May I just mention, if you alpha carrier going with another alpha, I think it's better to go for expert opinion.
Yes.
Because you know, just saying it, you may not know there's more than just alpha. So it'd be good for people with more knowledge about this to be able to say it's okay. To be honest, yeah, as Prof said, at times you have some severe alphas as well, you know.
No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Sorry, you're absolutely right. If somebody has an alpha thalassemia trait, they should have the same sort of, in fact, referral to a specialist hematology investigations to see if their partner has alpha thalassemia trait. That's absolutely right. But if, let's say their partner was beta thalassemia trait and their alpha thalassemia trait, the alpha and the beta don't combine to form any serious illness for the unborn baby. Alpha and alpha does. Beta and beta for the newborn and child, yes. So it does get a bit complicated, but hopefully obstetricians are aware of these differences. These are the people that need to be aware, and midwives should be as well, but I'm not too sure that they always are. I'm talking about alpha now. It's not as common. It's slightly more, it used to be slightly more complicated to diagnose which alpha you've got, but if they know that, if that person knows they've got alpha, then they've got the right to ask for specialist referral in terms of their partner being screened.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Now, if you have, if you have sickle cell warriors online who want to ask specific questions, please give them the opportunity to do so. I don't see any hands raised. I can only see Deputy Imam who raising his hand.
Yeah, it's only Deputy, but we've got about 6 questions.
Okay, let's go through them quickly, very quickly. I will seek your indulgence. Maybe we may go a little bit 15 minutes above time now because it's because of the topic, please. So let's quickly address the questions. Go on quickly.
Okay. Do we want to take Deputy Imam, or should I just go with the questions?
No, ask the questions. Ask the questions, please.
This
Deputy will come in later.
Saying that nowadays there is the option of IVF for couples. They want you to, if that is something that is a solution also.
Prof?
IVF as a...
I would prefer Dr. Momo, if you don't mind, to answer.
Yeah, thank you. I think I mentioned about that previously. Is it the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, or I don't know if you're talking about going the medical route, because IVF is available to everybody. So yes, if you go IVF, I think they also scrutinize and make sure that the what they are implanting is as free as possible from any form of genetic disease. So yes, IVF, but this is not going to be on NHS. But if you go for the pre-implantation genetic diagnosis testing, that one is NHS sponsored, but there are very strict criteria for one to be eligible. So yes, I think IVF is a good choice.
Okay, but it's not free.
That carriers, but it's not on the NHS. But there are some, it depends on your postcode actually. If you are lucky to live in a postcode where IVF is also free, but I think there are criteria to be met as well. Some can have IVF under NHS depending on their age and other criteria if they are met.
Yeah, thank you. Further questions, please.
In 1960, was there a heel prick test to detect the illness in babies? I was born in the late 60s and I am AS.
I can answer that one. They had not developed the sickle screening linked with the Guthrie, the heel prick test in that era. It developed decades later.
Okay.
Thank you.
And there is a question here. It says, as mentioned by Dr. Ojewuyi, we are very religious. Realistically, can we pray sickle cell away?
Well, can we pray sickle cell away? Well, I mean, that's a religious question. I mean, you cannot pray sickle cell away. I mean, that's just the truth. You cannot pray. We do say it here, from an Islamic point of view. We have traditions in which, well, during the time of the prophet, not only sickle cell, all diseases, because of faith, people came to ask the prophet that we get sick. Should we take medication in order to get well, or should we pray it away? The prophet said, for every disease created by God, God has sent down a cure for it, even if you don't know it yet. So tadawu, take medication. If you are sick and you know the medication, take the medication and get well. So it's really very, very important. I mean, next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll bring in the imams to talk about this from a religious point of view. Not only sickle cell. You can pray for good health in Islam, but if you are sick, prayer is good. You can pray for God to give you good health, but you have to take medication, because the prophet said, take medication when you are ill and then pray for good health from Allah. Okay, so any further question, please?
The next question actually seemed to be a religious question. Do you want us to leave it for next week, since we have other questions?
Okay, yes, let's leave the religious questions till next week, inshallah.
Yeah, well, now this other question says, for parents that conceive naturally, can screening of the fetus be done by for sickle cell? I think you mentioned that.
Yes.
Okay.
The answer is yes. Yeah.
Okay. Then we've asked for a couple about to be married to go for genotype testing, and they've been asked to pay. Is this something they can get freely from the hospital?
Okay. Screening before marriage. Can this be done free in the hospitals? Maybe Dr. Sharifa?
It should be.
Yeah, I think yes. I think that should be. If your GP should be able to do that, and I think it's important for you if you don't know your genotype, something is worth it to go to your GP, because children that have been born since after the screening was introduced are lucky to know what their genotype is. They know if they are AS or SS. But those that are AA or other genotypes will not have any result. But those that are carriers will know. So, but if you are not born in this country, if you are not born in the UK, I think it's a reasonable thing to do to ask your GP to check your genotype for you. It's important.
If can I also add, if they find any difficulties with GPs, because sometimes they can give the wrong answers, sadly, I would suggest they contact the Sickle Cell Society. They can go online and find the details of the Sickle Cell Society and get advice.
Yeah.
They'll tell them where they live, etc., and they will signpost them. There might be a sickle cell center nearby, or they will know of a screening service that might be available. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's really very helpful. We mentioned last week here, incidentally, I mean, in many Muslim majority countries now, actually there is legislation that the government encourages anybody who wants to marry, they have to do a pre-marital screening to determine, their genotype. And if both of them are AS, they don't stop them, but they counsel them and tell them the consequences, and then they leave them to it. So because of the ethical issue, so they have made screening obligatory, and then counsel those who need counseling before they put their step. I mean, Prof, do you think that should be the way to go into the future here in the UK?
Yeah, I think that's a lovely approach. I think what was happening before, for example, in Cyprus, they did change it, but they had this mandatory premarital screening, as you've referred to it. But what they were then saying, and it's happened in some other areas, and it just doesn't work, is when they find that both of them are carriers, they say you cannot marry. You cannot carry on, and you're getting into human rights issues, whether you like it or not.
That's right. Yeah.
So I like the approach that you've mentioned. In this, I don't understand why people are being asked to pay for genotype unless they're asking for some incredibly expensive DNA analysis for some reason. But as Dr. Momo has said, that people should be able to, have the right to go to their GP. However, I'm afraid there are still some GPs who are not as aware of things as we think they should be. So what I'm saying is, yeah, go to your GP, but if you have any difficulties there, try and go to the charity or to this, find out if you've got a sickle cell center where they have what's called walk-in referral. You can just refer yourself. So sadly, people can come across obstacles where there should not be obstacles.
The obstacles. Thank you. Okay, control. Further questions?
What is the current training of sickle cell disease and treatment for medical professionals? How robust is this, and what are the updates?
I can
Dr.
say
Sharifa.
that. I can say that, following what Prof said previously, there was little or nothing taught to students in the university about sickle cell disease, but now it's part of the curriculum. So at least in the last few years, it's part of the mandatory curriculum for students, or medical student, nursing student, to learn about sickle cell disease while in the university.
Can I just
Okay.
add to
Okay,
that?
go on.
Medics have been ahead of nurses in terms of incorporating it into the curriculum. It's only in September this year that it will be incorporated into the nursing curriculum, believe it or not. And that was because it took the death of a patient recently, and it caused a huge furor, quite rightly. And at last, somebody from the Nursing and Midwifery Council, actually a chief exec of the NHS trust where the individual died, was so appalled by what she uncovered, she became a member of the Nursing and Midwifery Council, and she has pushed this through. So by September, at last, all aspects of the nursing curriculum, adult, children, the different groups, will have sickle cell mandatory. Can you imagine? It's taken until 2020.
Yes, 2023. Yeah, that's really unbelievable.
Before that, it was ad hoc. Before that, there was good practice in some areas.
Just add as well.
Oh, sorry, we couldn't hear that. Deputy Imam wanted to ask a question.
Well, that's after.
Okay, sir. Okay, go on.
Okay.
Go on, doctor.
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to add as well. So after this, no one is listening document I talked about 2 weeks ago. That document, no one is listening, is making it actually now we have mandatory trainings in the hospital. Like I've been on a teaching spree, I said. I've been teaching on sickle cell almost every 2 months to different groups of people. And because we want people to understand what sickle cell disease is, when people that have sickle cell disease go to the emergency department, we want them to be seen properly, taken care of properly. And it's so amazing that people truly are ignorant. And you see, when they know what to do, they try their best, although the best is not good enough, but we'll not stop. We keep training them until we are all perfect and better at managing people with sickle cell disease. So some of the challenges as well is that they find it very hard. Like when you go to ED with emergency department with pain that needs or opioid or like morphine, at times the dose of pain relief that someone with sickle cell disease needs is so high. And at times, the people that are not educated in managing sickle cell disease find it hard to believe that it can give such a dose. So this top form of training is to enlighten them, to let them know, yes, you can give it, because their pain is so severe. For instance, when they have just pain, severe pain. Whereas when it's sickle cell disease, a child can have maximum dose of 25 milligrams. So you can see, so some people in pediatrics ED will not give a child 25 milligrams. They think 10 milligrams is what we give. I'm just coming from adult medicine. I only give 10 milligrams. But they have to be taught, they have to be trained. And I understand the fears as well, because you have to be careful when giving some of these medicines. They can have side effects. They can affect the breathing, the respiration. So yes, we keep training them to say, actually, yes, you are not giving it blindly. You are monitoring them. You are responding to their pain score. You are reassessing them, making sure that their breathing is not becoming lower than they came with. Thank you.
Thank you, doctor. I mean, as you mentioned, in relation to, the last week you had, experiences from the warriors, sickle cell warriors, in relation to the treatment in the hospitals. In relation to, sometimes, so some say that they will be in pain, and then they will not be attended to, they will not be taken seriously, and things like that. Now, I mean, part of training, and one of our colleagues here did mention that perhaps the system itself in relation to, I mean, sickle cell, could this be part of, I mean, the key performance indexes, KPI for nurses in relation to how they attend to children and warriors? I mean, people with sickle cell disease. Because, I mean, last week I had really very troubling narrative stories about how they are responded to when they go to hospital.
Prof, we've got a warrior's hand up. If you
okay, warrior's hand up. Okay, yeah. Let her perhaps maybe ask the question.
Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much, Dame, for all the work you've done for the warriors. Dr. Sharif, I appreciate it, and Professor. My name is Latifat. I'm part of 3 warriors in the family, and my sister was one of the ones last week that was on the panel. She went to hospital yesterday, and she still had to wait an hour before her protocol was followed whilst in pain. So it's an ongoing endemic. I'm glad it's now being written into the nursing. I now understand it a bit with what Dr. Sharifa is saying regarding the dosage of them not wanting to give as much opiate as is already written. It's also a catch-22. Is it that they don't understand the doctor's instructions, or they're trying to go against the doctor's instructions? Because this is a procedure written by an hematologist, a specialist. So why is it not being followed? Because of the death of the boys that died and all the problems we're having, everyone's getting procedures. So I expect that these procedures are to be followed as soon as you get into the hospital. You have to be seen within 30 minutes, but we're still getting the same treatment. What do you think we can do going forward, apart from the trainings that Dr. Sharifa is doing, being written into the law and things like that? Should we start educating from the schools? What can we do? Because we're seen as a pain anyway. If we go in, if we keep quiet, we're ignored. If we scream, we're seen as being terrorizing or being rude to the nurses. What can we do? Because this is a lifelong pain. This is not something that's going away. People need to appreciate that this is blood. It's not a kidney that can be removed. It's not an eye pain. This is blood. This is all over our body. There's nothing we can do. Even though we're transfused, it's still blood. It's still regenerating. It's still causing the same thing. So we need people to understand that this is not going anywhere, and we need help in order to for treatments to be done properly. Thank you so much.
Yes, yeah. Let me start with, Dame, and then Dame, do you have anything to say on that? Well, we heard so many of such stories last week, and also Dr. Bismillah. Yes. Go on.
This demonstrates, obviously, as you say, clearly that the campaigning side of sickle has to be carried on, actually has to be increased. And Latifat, I think, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Yes, Latifat, yeah. Mm-hmm. You were encouragingly asking what else can an individual do. So I would hope people are members of the Sickle Cell Society. I am a patron of the Sickle Cell Society, so I'm waving the flag for the main national charity for sickle cell, which is a campaigning organization to improve the quality of care for those affected by the condition. However, you know, the more members they have, the more influential people that join forces. If we can get more celebrities on board, more political people on board, but most importantly, more individuals that are affected by the condition and their families, make this a really enormously significant charity that is campaigning with the politicians, with everybody. That's what I would like to see. I think more people could support the Sickle Cell Society.
Thank you. Dr. Sharifa.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sister Latifa. Yeah, I think it's really difficult. The journey is very long from when you get into the hospital So when you are giving the pain relief, so what we have done in pediatrics, like in my service, which I lead, we started, we gave this passport, yellow passport, to every child that has sickle cell disease, so that when they come to the hospital, they don't join the queue. You know, there's a queue that you first of all get triaged on, the queue that tells you whether you go to ED or minor or GP or PELC. So they bypass all that queue and they go straight to ED. And that pain relief, we educated the receptionist. When you see this card, you need to register them urgently, flag them up to the nurse that does the quick triage, flag them then to the nurse that now takes them to the doctor to prescribe. It's a long journey. And truly, despite this passport, we're trying hard. We're going out of our ways to make sure we get this 30 minutes, get pain relief within 30 minutes according to the NICE guideline. It's very hard. I'm still analyzing the current data in the last 1 year. It's so hard to get pain relief in 30 minutes, despite that you really want to achieve it. I think those that really got, even a child that was brought by an ambulance, hardly got that pain relief in maybe just 30 minutes. Because once that pain relief is now, you've been triaged, so you've been registered, that's when the time starts counting. And then the nurse triages, escalates, they wait for whoever is going to prescribe it. The person that's going to prescribe it may be seeing a patient at that time, so it finishes and quickly prescribes it. Then a nurse, only one nurse doesn't give this type of pain relief. It has to be two nurses. So at the time one nurse is available, you have to wait for the second nurse to witness that, yes, we are giving this medicine, and then it gets to the patient. So the journey is long, and for the person in pain, it's very long. It's even longer. It's going to be longer than 1 hour. You know, even that 30 minutes is very long. So I think we just have to keep educating people to try, because what I do when people delay, I go personally, why did you delay? What happened? And when you hear people explain what happened, how busy they were in ED, it's so difficult to say, oh, you could have done it quicker. But I think we all should continue to speak the same language. The Sickle Cell Society should continue to do what they are doing. That powerful document that came out, no one is listening, is powerful. And it went straight to the chief exec of every hospital for them to respond to. So they are working very hard. So right from the chief exec, there's a meeting happening in most hospitals to explain why they are not giving pain relief within 30 minutes. So everybody's interested, and we just hope it will only get better. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I mean, we have really been enlightened tonight. I mean, time spent. I want us to really want to wrap up now, inshallah. I mean, next week we're still going on to this, although from a religious perspective. But I want to thank, Prof. Elizabeth, Professor Dame Elizabeth Yanyo. We have really, really, really enjoyed your perspective on this issue, and also Dr. Sharifa Momo again, and all the sickle cell warriors. This has been really eye-opening and educative to us. And we hope, down the road, we'll call you again to join our platform. And we hope that you will really, join us.
Can I thank you, Professor? Professor, can I thank you for what you're doing? Brilliant.
Thanks a lot. Yes. Thanks so much. Yeah. Let me now hand over to Alaja Falila to sign us off, because time spent is about 10 minutes to 9 and we are 20 minutes over. So Alaja Fadila, please.
Our mother, Professor Anyo, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your knowledge with our audience. And I want to join Prof again to thank you and Dr. Sharifa too for being part of our program. And I want to join you too to thank Professor Badeni too. He really does a lot for the community. I pray God elongate your life to continue to be with this community for a long time. And until we see again next week, I say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just under 60 seconds, I'm going to tell you why investing in this opportunity will change your life. Are you ready? Start the clock. Over 20 years ago, a group of believers acquired a derelict pub slap bang in the center of the old Kent Road. As we've grown, so has our need for space. And we are embarking upon the journey of a lifetime to extend the good work of this masjid. And we need you to join us on this journey. Let me remind you of Allah's promise. Whoever builds a mosque for the sake of Allah, Allah will build for him a house in paradise. And it doesn't stop there. The masjid that we build will continue to give you rewards for as long as it remains standing, perhaps decades after you pass away. Think about all the people who attend the mosque to pray 5 times a day, every single day of the year. The Jummah service that is attended by hundreds of people, hundreds of youngsters learning how to recite the Quran, and your fellow brothers and sisters breaking their fast in the month of Ramadan, right here in this masjid. Inshallah, you'll get a slice of the reward. All of these and more coming straight to your scale of good deeds. So what are you waiting for? Help us build this masjid. Sponsor a prayer space and get your friends, neighbours and loved ones to sponsor one too. Or even better, get together and sponsor a whole saf. And inshallah, watch how Allah elevates you in this life and the next.
A dream turned an old pub into a mosque. Our growing population led to bringing the 100-year-old building to ground zero. Contributions of good people like you resulted into the current phase 1 of the Old Kent Road and Islamic Cultural Centre, London. The quest for a more befitting and functional mosque that caters for all makes us appeal for your generous donations to complete the MANUK Old Kent Road Mosque and Islamic Cultural Centre. Nothing is too small. Help rebuild our mosque, just a click. Contribute now, encourage your family, friends and loved ones to do the same and be rewarded with paradise. The future of Islam is the goal, paradise is the reward.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما إنا عرضنا الأمانة على السماوات والأرض والجبال فأبين أن يحملنها وأشفقن منها وحملها الإنسان